Hi grade 12. So today we are going to start our new unit called Vehicle Finance, and then after this we will talk about Home Finance, and we're going to spend quite a bit of time on these two units because they're really important for the future, and I find a lot of people don't have a great understanding of these things, even though they're probably your two biggest purchases in life, like your house and your car, maybe a few cars over your lifetime. Really big purchases, and it's definitely better if you can make informed decisions. So let's talk about a car for a little bit here, or a vehicle, not necessarily a car. Operating costs. So when you buy your car, you have to keep it going, and to do that, we have to include the costs of fuel. That's probably the most obvious one because we have to fuel up all the time. Right now gas prices are super duper low, but usually they fluctuate quite a bit, and if you're on a tight income, it's hard to keep gas in your car and pay for everything else that you need to pay for. So you need to pay for fuel, regular maintenance, whatever needs to get fixed, like oil changes and maybe getting your tires swapped out if you don't know how to do that yourself. Sometimes you're going to have to do repairs. Hopefully not too often, but they do come up. Things break eventually, even in the best cars. As well, you have to pay for the depreciation of the car. Depreciation. Because most cars, they're worth a certain amount when you first get it, and then over time, as you use it, it starts to break down just a little bit over time, and it's worth less. So when you sell the car, your car is not worth as much as it was at the beginning. That makes it a bad investment in general. And then obviously you also need insurance for your car because you can't drive a car in Manitoba without insurance legally. So if you get pulled over without insurance, you're in pretty big trouble. Alrighty. So choosing a car, it's a really big purchase often. Sometimes they can be pretty cheap, they're cheaper, but often it's a really big purchase, and you want to use your car for several years usually. So you want to make sure that it's going to be one that you're going to like for several years and that it's going to work for you for several years. Typically, I suggest you do a bunch of research and then go talk to someone who can help you buy the car, like a dealership or someone off of a private selling area. But do your research before you go. Don't just take someone else's word for it. What are some factors that need to be considered when choosing a vehicle? So this is where I usually want your input, but the things that usually pop up are options. Cars nowadays have so many different options you can go with. Personally, I need AC in a car. That's not something that I'm gonna ever go without in a car. I need AC in my car. That's gotta happen. A popular one is a sunroof, which I personally do not like, but that's something you might want. Maybe a better sound system if you like to play your music quite loud. All kinds of different options you could get. Even some cars have, some like SUVs have a third row. Maybe you like to have who knows, but they've got different options for you. Backup camera now, I'm gonna add that one in there. I like backup camera. Nowadays, brand new cars they have backup cameras in them just automatically, which is awesome because it makes it so much easier. Here's one that I think is really important, especially in this day and age. Low gas consumption. Especially since gas is so expensive and, the state of our environment. If I can use less, that would be great. So low gas consumption. We live in Winnipeg where winters are pretty ridiculous. So I want this car or this vehicle or whatever to be good in the winter. Some cars ride really low to the ground, and if you hit a little bit of snow, you're not really going to make it through that snow. I had a little car and it wasn't great in the winter, and then I got winter tires and it changed everything and it was so much better. So for me, I just needed winter tires, but some cars just aren't gonna cut it in the winter. Another one is enough space. So if you have like 6 kids, you probably need some type of van. If it's just you, maybe you need a really compact little car, because compact little cars are so good on gas and they're pretty peppy. But if you got 6 kids, maybe you need something a little bit bigger. Here's one that I don't know anything about cars, so I don't really pay as much attention to this as maybe I should. What's your drivetrain looking like? Is it all-wheel drive? Is it 4-wheel drive? There's lots of different options in there, and usually the type of car you want comes in different options, so depends. I always look at the year of the car that I'm thinking about buying. I want a newer car because it's going to last for longer, and I usually want a newer car because it probably had less owners and stuff like that, and it's probably in better condition. I want it to have, maybe I should say low mileage, as in it doesn't have that many kilometers on it, because it could be like 5 years old, but if it was barely driven, then it's still probably in really good condition and maybe needs some little tune-ups, but it's still probably really good to go. I want this thing to be in good condition. I've mentioned that already, but just thought I would add it to my list here. And I want it to have no major accidents. Now, if you're buying a brand new, yeah, it shouldn't have any accidents at all. But if I'm buying it like a year or 2 years old or 5 years old or whatever, if it has had a major accident, and especially if it's been written off, I don't think I really want to buy that car because I don't know the full extent of damage that was done to that car. And I just don't want to have to deal with that myself. So I'd rather a car that I know hasn't been in major accidents and I can kind of not worry about that so much. Anything else you can think of, please add it to the space. There's certainly lots more things that people consider when they buy cars. Color, that's definitely, you know what, I'm going to add that one. That one's important to me. You can't change the color too easily. It's pretty expensive to get a new paint job on your car. So anything else, add it in there. And then let's flip and let's try some small equations here. So this is called the 40% rule. If you wish to borrow money to purchase a car, financial planners, like banks, generally advise you that your total monthly debt repayments should be no more than 40% of your net income. So how much money you make, how much you're paying back to your loan shouldn't be more than 40%. And the reason for that is the other 60% of your income should probably be going towards like your living arrangements, your food, your like your gym membership, your entertainment, all that other stuff that you have to spend money on. So other stuff adds up, and we don't want to use more than 40% for debts. If your monthly net income is $1,200, what is the maximum monthly debt repayment you can afford? So they told me I can go up to 40% of this. So let's try and think of how we can do that in our calculators. I want 40% of $1,200. Now, typically in math, of means multiply. And typically in math, we can't really straight up use percents in like in a calculator. So I have to change this to a decimal. Reminder, we're going to divide this by 100 or move the decimal place 2 places to the right, however you want to think of that. So I end up with 0.40 times, and then the 1,200 can stay as it is. So a good time for my calculator. 0.4 times 1,200, and I got $480. So that's how much I can afford in terms of loans every month. If I try to go to the bank and get a loan for something that's going to be more than this a month, they're going to say, no, I don't think that's a great idea, because you're trying to commit too much of your monthly money towards this debt and not towards all the other stuff you have to pay for, like your water bill, your electricity bill, all that stuff. So let's just make a little note here. This is how much you can afford. How much you can afford on a monthly loan payment. Now, would I suggest you get a $475 loan every month? No, that's also still too high. You know, like let's go way below this, so that way if some emergency were to happen, you'd still be like have enough money to be able to to pay for that emergency and pay your loans back. Number one thing here is that if we ever get a loan for something, we have to be sure that we can reasonably pay that every month. Because if you don't pay back your loans every month, okay, 1 or 2 months they'll give you a pass. They might charge you a little bit of a fee. The next couple months that you do it, eventually they'll make you pay back a lot more money, and then they'll take your car away, or they'll take your house away, or they'll take whatever else they can away from you, which is not a great place to be in. And then your credit score kind of plummets, and that's not a great place to be either. So I don't suggest we all go and get loans of $480 if we're making this much a month. I suggest we even go lower than that. Pick a car that's not quite as fancy, and work towards a better one. So let's go backwards now. Let's say they tell us we can afford monthly payments of $600. So this person probably makes a little bit more than this because they can afford just a little bit more. I'm going to try turning on my lamp and see if there's less shadows. I don't know if that helped or not, but here we go. So they can afford $600, a little bit more. So hopefully they can afford a little bit, they make a little bit more than this person. And let's try and figure out how we can do that in our calculators here. So last step, what we had done was we found our monthly payment equals, we took 0.4, we multiplied it by our income. I'm going to use that same little setup to figure out how to go backwards now. So this time they gave us a monthly payment, which was $600. So let's substitute $600 in. Let's keep everything else the same. So I'm just kind of copying it down. And I want to figure out what is our income if this is what we can afford. So let's do a little bit of algebra here, just a little bit. Right now, our income is being multiplied by 0.4. So to have just income, to isolate income, what we're going to do is the opposite of multiplying, which is dividing. And we want to keep this equation balanced, or we want to keep it fair. So if we do something to one side, we also have to do it to the other. So we're going to divide this side by 0.4 as well. And I did this earlier, and I got income equals $1,500. Now that makes sense to me because $1,200 person could afford $480. $1,500 person can afford a bit more, $600. So this is how much we make every month. That's how much we can afford on a loan. Reasonably afford. Not perfect situation or anything. It's just it's kind of an estimate. All right, let's talk about taxes. A 2018 Explorer Sport 4-wheel drive is purchased from a dealer in Selkirk, Manitoba for $44,036. Okay, not cheap. What are the total taxes paid on the purchase, and what is the total amount paid? All right, so most fun thing ever, especially about being an adult, is anything you buy, you have to pay taxes on it. Now we're going to talk about taxes more in depth in the future, but right now what I need you to know is that when you buy cars from a dealer or like a dealership, like those big places where they have a million cars on the lot, you have to pay both PST and GST. Now, right now, taxes together are 12%. I heard that we're supposed to go down to 11% in July, but we'll see if that happens, especially with all this craziness. So in total, we pay 12%. So I want to figure out if this is how much the car sells for with all the options and stuff that I want, I have to add 12% to that. So I have to figure out what is 12% of this $44,000 number. So hopefully taxes are pretty, we've done this before. It should be old hat at this point. I'm going to take how much the car is worth, and I'm going to multiply it by 0.12. Again, changing this to a decimal and multiplying. Let's see. I got $5,284.32, and I kind of smushed myself into there. So I bought a $44,000 car, which is not cheap. That is quite a bit of money, $44,000. And then I had to pay another $5,000 to the government. Now, if I didn't kind of think of that coming in, That might be a bit of a shock. You know what I mean? Like, I have to be prepared to pay an extra $5,000 just to the government on this, because the difference between, $45,000 and $50,000 is a lot of money, and I can definitely think of other things to do with $5,000. So I have to be prepared for that before I walk into the dealership and before I say, okay, this is what I can afford. What is the total amount? Well, we have to pay for the car and we have to pay those taxes, so let's add them together and figure out what that is in total. Quite a bit of money. $49,320.32. So just about $50,000. My gosh, that's a lot of money. I certainly don't want to be in this situation if I can't afford that. Especially when I'm thinking oh, it's more like $40,000. No, it's really more like $50,000. So that's it for today. Give the homework questions a shot tomorrow, and we'll see how it goes. Thanks. Have a good night.